So I thought I'd film a little addendum to the last video by saying that well, I spoke to my mother earlier about all this, and I asked her again what the meaning of the name Cottle is, and she was like, "Oh, it means farmer," and she was like, "Well, because she's always been one of these, no offense, but glass half empty, uh, you know, if it's too good to be true, it probably is typed." She's a pessimist, I think. And it is a fault in my mum, I'm afraid to say, because I've been digging a bit more into our family history that stretches as far back as ancient Egypt, actually. And I'm going to bring in the Cottons here and the Cotterills, since I think our names, the lineages of all those names clearly connect with one another. And, via Cotterill, apparently definitely meaning cottage dweller. I think it probably does sort of stretch back to the early Roman conquests. But yeah, lots of us may well have been dwelling in cottages. And perhaps not in the villa, but in a sort of smaller, yet Roman-built sort of form of temporary accommodation nonetheless, which would have been rather sophisticated by the standards of the time. But then I read the name meaning of cotton, and I'm like, well, has that got nothing to do with cotton? The commodity. And then I look at, for instance, where does the origin of the word cotton come from? It's first used in Arabic as katan. And where does the family name Cotter come from? Very possibly. Could it come from the Lower Nile Basin and Sudan, where cotton was first cultivated? Very likely. So yeah, farmers, yes, fair enough. Also the Cotter family would have been also farmers and landowners. And yes, engaging in relatively sophisticated agriculture for the standards of the world at the time. But this cotton connection is really intriguing to me. So I'm staggered that historians can come up with nothing better than cotter, cottage. It's a little bit silly, I think. There couldn't be a connection, could there, with the increasing dynamism of the Egyptian agrarian economy in sort of whichever millennium century BC it was, and the development of cotton agriculture, and the people dominating agriculture and cotton in the Nile Basin, those would have been Egyptian nobles. And likewise, I think that sort of those cotton farming interests, as the Roman Empire expanded to also include Egypt, likely gave rise very possibly to the Cotter family, with interests in the farming of cotton in Egypt, which would have been a major export of Egypt to the Roman Empire in antiquity, if I'm not entirely mistaken. We know from the Arabic, katan, the word hasn't changed all that much. Cotter is very close. I'd be highly surprised if the Cotter family had nothing to do with cotton. And Cottle, meaning knife in French, was got cotta, cut. Coat. Coat augment, cotemai. Cotemai. We shorten cutter. And all those sorts of names, and cotton. I can't see how cotton can have anything other than something to do with cotton. I really don't. And those I think do trace their lineages back ultimately through quite a few centuries to the Cotter family of ancient Rome, and thence to the cotton plantations of Egypt and Egyptian nobility, more than likely. So there we go. I think that's solved, and we are back to being farmers. Brilliant. Because good to have land and, and property, you know, and and yeah, contributing to the development of civilization. It's not such a bad thing, really. But you know, Thompson, little Scots name, who had a wall inside Scotland to prevent them from getting out and destroying civilization. I prefer to remain, you know, living in the trees or whatever, or the hills, under a little like lean-to made of sticks. But no, here we come. I'll give you, I don't know, literacy or something, and ultimately, you know, in advanced agriculture and aqueducts and roads, and you know, our science and nice houses, all that sort of stuff, lovely stuff, you know. So like, does Cottle mean farmer? Like, I'd be surprised if the Cottle and Cotton families aren't linked in history. I don't think there's all that many people called Cotton. There's not all that many people called Cotterill. I'd be, yeah, pretty surprised if it doesn't share a common ancestry, really. That name. Probably in the Cotter family. Thence to Cottels in Normandy, via quite a few steps through the Dark Ages, which would be very hard to trace. But there we go. Thank you everyone for watching. Bye bye, love you lots.